Okay, so I think we'll get started. Welcome everybody to the second session of Building Blocks for Local Food Entrepreneurs. My name is Nick Custer. I work for the University of Michigan Flint's Office of Economic Development, its Innovation Incubator Program. I'm very happy to welcome you guys here this morning. So a couple quick things. This is going to be about an hour and a half session. Majority of the session is going to be a presentation, some activities by our speaker today. And then the last bit we'll save for questions. And so we're going to ask everybody to stay on mute during the session today so there's no distractions. But as you have questions come up, please just add them to the chat. And when we get to that section at the end, I'll be able to read those off to Sean. Other than that, this is our second session again in our series. Our last one in this series will be held on November 18th. That'll be around labeling, distribution, and packaging. So if you haven't yet registered for that, I'm going to put the registration link in the chat, and you can do so at your convenience anytime between now and November 18th. Again, we're just really excited for you guys to join us today. We want to make sure that you get the most out of this session. And so we'll be doing two things. We'll be recording the session, and we'll have that posted on our website. I'll share a link with you guys after the session today. And then also, Sean is going to mention a lot of resources. So instead of having you guys scribble all those down, we're going to provide you with a sheet after the fact that has all those different links and different elements that you're going to need as you're marketing your brand or products. And so with that, we'll get started. I just want to quickly introduce our speaker today. Again, it's Mr. Sean Gartland, who's the culinary director of the Flint Food Works and the owner and chef at Feast Gourmet Kitchen Shop in Fenton. With that, we'll let Sean take it away.
All right. Thank you, Nick. I hope everybody's doing well today. If you were here for our last session, it was a really good discussion of getting your business or your food-based business kind of up and running as far as licensing and just the basic structure of your business. And today we're going to take the next sort of natural progression in your business, and that is building your brand. And we're going to discuss a little bit about marketing, doing some competitive analysis. And from the last session, if you didn't receive any of the resources from there, there should have been something in there called a business model canvas to work on. So we're kind of looking at the customer segments and getting to the market in this session. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen here, and we're going to go through a little bit of a presentation. I'll be breaking off a couple times to discuss and share my browser screen to discuss some tools to help with some of the topics that we're going to go over today. So, all right. Go ahead and share. So we'll get the presentation started off here, and I'm assuming Nick, chime in if it's showing up correctly.
Yeah, it looks good.
All right. So we should just see the presentation up there. All right, so our branding and marketing for your food products. This is all about, and just as a caveat here, the topics and things that we're talking about today really can be applied to any sort of business, period. All right, whether it's a food product or not. What we're kind of going over are the basic principles of building a brand today. And especially with food products, depending on whether or not you have invented something completely new or you're trying to enter into the marketplace with a product that is already kind of established, these tactics and some of the principles we're going to go over are really important to help you stand apart from your competition. So some of the elements that we're going to talk about today are naming your business. And even if you've kind of gone through the steps from our previous session of, establishing an LLC and coming up with a name for your business, that doesn't necessarily lock you into that name for what you put on your packaging. So, Sean Gartland LLC might be the company that oversees, Sean's Fabulous Cookies, for example. So we're going to talk a little bit about naming. Logo design, whether it's doing it yourself or working with a graphic designer, there's some really important elements to consider when you're putting a logo together for your product. Channels to the market, and this is a little bit deceiving. You might think, well, does this mean how do I get my product, into the car and deliver it to the market? What we're talking about here are the channels that get your brand into the world. So this is, the different ways that we can do that. And then we're going to talk about value proposition, which even though this, shows up as number 4 on this slide, the value proposition is something that you should constantly be thinking of, and evolving over time as your product is developed. And then lastly, we'll talk about your competition and looking at what they're doing and figuring out if you can do it better. Okay. So the next thing first thing we're going to talk about is, talking about your name. And there are some steps here in creating the perfect name. And something called creating your brand avatar is something that you're going to want to consider. And I don't mean like the movie Avatar. What we're trying to talk about is defining your customer, or, how they come up with you, or I guess how they see you in the marketplace. So if you don't know who you're creating your brand for, then you'll never find a compelling name. So you really need to think about, is your product going to be marketed to kids, adults, senior citizens? Those are just 3 segments off the top of my head. You have to really think about those specific issues when you're coming up with your brand. So you're going to really lean heavily on looking at demographics, location, and what sort of social media or just media in general that they utilize. I had a conversation this morning with a gentleman pertaining to my own business, and he said to me, I don't really use the computer very much, so how do I find out about your store? And I use a lot of social media, so I might be missing a whole segment of people that don't necessarily get onto Facebook, Instagram, and what have you, by not advertising in the local paper. All right, so you got to start out with your perfect customer, and that's the person or segment of people that you think are going to be your best customer, and really kind of hone your message in on them. And then you need to think about a day in the life of your customer. Ultimately, when we're creating a product, we're trying to solve a problem for the customer. So it's as simple as taking I've done this exercise where you draw a stick figure on a piece of paper, and then think about all the things, just list them on that piece of paper that stick figure person, your optimal customer, think about the things they do all day long, and how and when does your product affect them during the day. Are there times during the day that you're solving a problem for that customer? All right. I can get this to, sorry, I'm going a little ahead of myself here. Okay. So the next thing is to create your brand archetype. And your archetype, put simply, it's the goal is to understand as clearly as possible what your brand will mean or represent, which is sort of really important for deciding on the best brand name and how you're going to attract customers. So let's use 2 examples of a brand to kind of illustrate this. Nike, obviously I've got the swoosh up there. Anybody that sees that swoosh knows that it belongs to Nike. But the message that they're trying to convey, that actual Nike term is a well-known brand. It's the name of an ancient Greek goddess who personified victory. So if you can imagine in the 60s and 70s when they were putting Nike together, or these guys were just trying to put a tennis shoe company together, they needed to come up with a name for it. Do they call it Swift? Do they call it Fast? Some of those things are a little bit obvious and kind of knock you on the head. But when you dig in a little bit deeper into the Greek mythology, you find Nike, a Greek goddess who personified victory. That's what they want their brand to kind of mean, is victory. All right. So you think about this as, what brand values do you want to communicate? Is it possible that you could use a pun or play on words? Would that be appropriate? Do you want the brand to bring a sense of luxury? Let's use Lexus cars as an example. just hearing the word Lexus before you ever saw a car, it just sounds luxurious. Okay, so those are some of the things when you're trying to actually come up with the name that's going to be smacked right on top of your product. Some of the things that you want to think about as far as how it conveys a message to your customers. And then think about the nonverbal meanings and emotional associations that you want for your brand. You need to be consistent. Okay. All right. So to try and figure this out, there are a lot of different ways to kind of come up with a name. First and foremost is keep it simple. Try not to have a word name like Sean's Incredible Cookies of the Midwest. First of all, it doesn't fit onto a package all that great, and it's easily forgettable. All right, there's no one syllable. It's not like Madonna or Cher. All right, we're not gonna just iconically remember that. This first bullet point here, though, is a little bit deceiving, or I guess I don't know if I agree with it 100%, but don't be too specific. So if I name my company Sean's Cookies of the Incredible Cookies of the Midwest, kind of pigeonholes me into cookies. And what happens if the market sentiment shifts a little bit and people are really into brownies? So where's that leave me? Who's going to want to buy a brownie from a company called Sean's Incredible Cookies? The cookies might be incredible, but who knows about the brownie? So don't be too specific if you can help it. Keep it short, of course. And then I've got a personal story about originality and using variations of trademark names. I'll share with you in a second. But coming up with the name, you want to be descriptive, evocative, invented, lexical, acronym, geographical, and founder. These are all different types of ways to name a brand. So descriptive names can be as simple as Toys R Us, General Motors. All right, they describe what that company does. Evocative or powerful name examples, Nike, Amazon. These are things that are one word and they are powerful. They're powerful. All right. Invented. There's no more famous invented word than Google. But things to think about are like Kodak, Xerox, Exxon. Those are items that are, companies that are words that were just 100% made up out of nowhere. And now they're completely iconic. Lexical brand names rely on a little bit of wordplay. So puns, phrases, compound words, alliteration, onomatopoeia, anything that you can kind of throw in there to make it catchy. You've probably heard the term like brainworm when you hear a song or a jingle. Brand names can do the same thing to you. So, Dunkin' Donuts, Crazy Glue, Sizzler Steakhouse. These are some examples of, lexical brand names. Then you've got the acronym names, which if you're starting out in business might not be the best route to go, but there are some very successful acronyms out there that people recognize the world around, things like IBM, BP, UPS. These are, they stand for an actual, international business machine. They stand for a larger, kind of extended name for these brands. And then if you're, in a geographic region that conjures up nostalgia or, makes people feel good, throw that in there. People from Michigan are very good about that. Just here in our local area, I can't tell you how many different Flint named businesses are out there now. Vehicle City Tacos, Flint Food Works, Flint Brewing Company, all these different things are out there. New York Life, Nantucket Nectars, they throw in a geographic part into their brand name to help kind of center it in its place of doing business. And then don't forget, if you've got a really cool name, throw that in there too. Kellogg, that became a cereal, right? And that name is synonymous with breakfast food now. Ford, obviously, not invented the car, but really invented the mass production of cars and automobiles. And Ben and Jerry's, if you were just throw, Joe and Sean on a pint of ice cream, you might not know what it is, but anytime you see Ben and Jerry's, you know that it means ice cream. Those are some successful ways to name your business. All right. Keep over clicking, sorry. So the next thing you really have to kind of think about is checking the availability of your name. Once you come up with a short list of things that you want to call your brand, you're going to want to perform a domain name search. It'd be terrible to spend a week brainstorming a great name and then being convinced that it's the absolute only track for your brand, just to find out that somebody already has that domain and a bunch of domains similar to it. You're going to want to kind of do your research on the different social media channels to make sure that you're not naming your business similar to about 50 other businesses that are out there. And then there's something called the Trademark Electronic Search System tests. That's a website, through the U.S. government where you can actually check different names that you might come up with against their database of names that have been trademarked. And I had the experience of poorly naming a business when I first formed my cooking school business back in the mid 2000s. I named it Epicurious Cooking School. It was a play on words that I thought was clever and was something that would be catchy. Epicure is the sort of term for a gourmet, somebody who's really into gourmet food. And then curious, obviously, is somebody who's curious. So I thought, if you're curious about food, Epicurious Cooking School. Well, unbeknownst to me, the word Epicurious was a made-up word that was already trademarked, and it was owned by the magazine brand Gourmet Magazine. So after about 2 years of business, just locally, I was creating quite a nice, successful side hustle with this business. I received a cease and desist letter from a law firm in New York City. And I was forced to give up the domain that I had owned and stop using the name. So do your research, learn from my mistake. Don't pick a name that is already in use out there in the world. Okay. The next thing is to test it. And the best way to do that is to put it in print, write it down. I think some of the best ways to test out a brand name on yourself is to just open up a simple Google Doc or Word document and write that name down like 50 different times and put it in 50 different fonts in a bunch of different colors and just see like how does that register with you. And then try using it live to describe your business. So everybody's probably heard the term elevator pitch. This is the way that you might describe your business to somebody in a really quick, like 30-second description. So when you meet somebody on an elevator and they say, "Hey, Sean, what do you do?" You're able to quickly rattle off, what it is your business or product does. If you can't use that brand name comfortably, in a sentence or while talking, then it's probably not the best brand name for you. If it's too many words, too many syllables, too hard to pronounce, then you should possibly move on. And then test it out on people, but remain skeptical. I always say the worst people to test things on are friends and family, even though they are your most immediate resource. And I say that they're the worst because sometimes they are not so quick to give you their true feelings on things because they don't want to hurt your feelings. So if you're, testing out a recipe on somebody and you say, "This is my brand name of, Joe Schmo's ice cream," one, it may taste terrible. And two, the brand name Joe Schmo's ice cream is terrible. And if you give it to grandma or grandpa, of course they're going to love it because you made it. And so they're going to say, oh, this ice cream tastes great. And this brand name is so clever, Sean. Way to go. You need to be skeptical of what your friends and family are telling you, even though they are a great resource to test things out on. You got to get out into the world and throw this stuff in front of some strangers, colleagues who don't necessarily have a close tie to you, and maybe some people who don't mind hurting your feelings, or at least you can trust them to tell you the truth. Get these brand names out in front of those people and make sure that they are effective and that they resonate and give a good reaction. Okay. All right. So the next thing we're going to talk a little bit about is logo design. Once you have your brand, there are some elements that go into actually creating a logo. And it can be as simple as a sketch on a bar napkin, while you're brainstorming, to something as elaborate as working with the graphic designer for, multiple mock-ups. So some of the things you're going to want to think about is that this logo, it really defines your identity and it communicates your brand's personality. So you want your logo to kind of get in there, and while you're designing it, you got to ask yourself some questions. Why did we start the business? What are the beliefs and values that are important to us as a company? What do we do better than anybody else? What makes us special? And if we could describe our brand in 3 words, what would they be? So we need to think about these things as we're formulating a logo. All right, so you need to find some inspiration. Obviously, brainstorming your own ideas are great. Everybody who's on the internet has probably heard of Pinterest. This is an amazing space to go and just probably lose yourself for a few hours to really look at different ideas that other people have. And there's millions of logos on Pinterest. I went to Pinterest quite a bit when I was designing the layout of my shop, trying to find ideas. But get your audience involved. Brainstorming, it's all about getting ideas out on paper, even if they're really bad. So whether it's paper or sitting down with some friends with a chalkboard or a whiteboard and writing things down, get them all out there. I remember after receiving our cease and desist order for Epicurious Cooking School, we had to pick a new name. And we opened up a culinary encyclopedia that had all of these different terms and words and phrases in there that had to do with cooking and food. And my wife and I spent a couple hours and a couple bottles of wine trying to just go through there and figure out which one of those taglines is best for us. And we fell on feast. You can't trademark feast. It's just it's a noun, it's a verb, it's multiple things. So that's how we came up with our replacement for a trademarked name. The next thing is, don't forget about sort of like competitive inspiration. Some of the best places to figure out how to make a logo are to look at what your competition's doing. And if you're like a more easygoing, fun brand in a traditional marketplace, maybe play up on those differences with your logo. So, think about that. And I'm going to use the world of insurance or financial services as an example. We all think of that industry as being pretty buttoned up and conservative. Things that, most of the logos you see there are, conjure up images of strength and, prosperity. And let's say your insurance or financial services business caters to, college age students who are just getting into the, working world for the first time. Maybe you craft your logo to be a little bit more edgy and to appeal to that demographic. So think about that in terms of how you're designing things. So choose the right design style. Your brand's message, it needs to stand out. So an effective logo looks professional and it kind of seamlessly fits in with the brand's identity all at the same time. But a good logo is unique and distinctive. It's memorable. It works in any size and anywhere, and it reflects your brand identity. Okay. So one of the things that you got to think about is shape, circle, square, rectangle. Think about the lettering. I always try to advise people, um, if you're going to come up with a logo, how does that look on a, tumbler, like a coffee cup? How does it look on a t-shirt? How does it look if you want to get a nice polo shirt embroidered with that logo? Is it going to look good on there? If it's like really thin script letter and you put that on a, in white on a black shirt, does it show? Can people see that while they're walking up to you and actually read the letters? So don't make something, or don't get, I guess, tied into something that you have, are very passionate about because it looks pretty on paper on a computer screen, without thinking through all the places that that logo might be placed. Okay. Most importantly, first and foremost, how is it going to look on your product? So if you're packaging your product, which, that's another, whole nother conference that we're going to do here, but what you're putting your product in, it has to, your brand has to stand out on that product, on the label. And if you make it so that it's hard to read, or if your logo, when it's shrunk down into a smaller size so it can fit onto the individual packaging, that it doesn't look good, then you need to rethink how you're putting it together. Okay. So before we move on to the next slide, I want to share a resource with you and go to my browser here and talk a little bit about logo design, in a way that you might do it yourself. This is a program called Canva, C-A-N-V-A. It's a website, and it's a web-based program. And you may have heard the term Adobe Design or Adobe products. These are very complicated software packages that graphic design artists use very commonly. Whereas this little guy here, this Canva, is very accessible to the average Joe. And by the average Joe, I mean me. So it's very simple. You can either sign up for a free account, or you can sign up, which has the free account has a ton of resources and a ton of stuff that you can access, or you can upgrade to some mid-level and high-level account statuses with this program, and that allows you access to some extra things, extra features, bells and whistles. So I would suggest starting out with the free version and then kind of moving on to an upgrade if you need it, as you're working with it. But just for the simple task of playing around with a logo, you can jump in on this for free. And our computer is kind of slow today, so I apologize. So this brings you to their homepage, and from here you can actually just type in logo. And it will take you to a place where you can actually create a blank logo, or use any number of different templates as sort of a jumping off point. Okay, and you can see some that have graphics on them, some that are circular, some that are square. But from here, you can basically come up with, your logo, or at least some mock-ups to then take and test out. You can test it out on people and say, what do you think? You can test it out with, with this guy right here. So what we'll do is we'll mock up our juice company, and then, so I put too many words in there. The program is very easily adapted to just kind of stretch things out so they fit better. You can change your color. So if, Mr. Juice Company is more into oranges, we can slide that down so it fits better, stretch it out. And then maybe Mr. Juice isn't the only message you want to convey here. You can add some text to it. And we can add a subheading, and we can call it cold pressed juice company. Slide that in here, and instantly you have a logo that works. Okay, so that's just something as simple. I mean, you can spend, and I have spent, quite a bit of time on this website creating mocked up logos, um, coming up with different designs for potential businesses. Even if you do want to work with a graphic designer, I have used this tool as a way to create some designs that that I like, and then give them to a graphic designer to then kind of refine for me and come up with a better layout. Okay. All right. So we'll go to the next slide here. And once we've come up with a nice logo and our brand name, we've got to figure out a way to get that into the marketplace. We have to figure out a way to get our message out there into the world in an effective way. And there are several traditional and non-traditional ways to do that. And we'll discuss some of those. So something that a term you may hear is brand asset. Brand assets are kind of everything that you have, going for your brand. Assets, things like logo, a tagline, a color scheme. These are things that you're going to want to, once you have them in place, remain consistent with in all of your marketing. And whether that is something as simple as always use my logo in black and white, or always use my logo with these 3 colors, and then you actually identify the colors, which a program like Canva can help you do, or working with a graphic designer, you can certainly do that. When I had my own personal logo designed for Feast, I was able to get the 4 colors that are in the logo. If you don't know it already, colors have codes to them. And so when it came time to design the website for my business, I was able to use the 4 consistent colors that were in my logo, and not just take a guess. All right. It's blue, yellow, red, and green, but there are specific kind of shades of those blue, yellow, red, and green that my graphic designer came up with. And when I put those on the website or in any other marketing that I utilize, I try to stick to those specific color codes. The same goes for font. So if your logo has a specific, really chunky block font to it, let's use University of Michigan, for example. That block M is always the same block M on everything that block M goes onto. It's not sometimes New Times Roman and sometimes it's Arial. It is always that same block M. And so that the same goes true for the Flint that goes underneath the M. It's always the same font. And keeping consistent is one of the things that really helps you to develop that brand identity and make it so that as you grow your business and grow your brand, it's easily recognized. If it's always the same thing, the more times, the more visual touches you get on a customer, the more times or impressions they get, the better off you're going to be. So their visual assets make up your brand's identity, and they're definitely going to appear in everything that is related to your business. So make sure that you keep track of them. You may have heard the term style book. A style book is, and for me, what it meant was I created a document that had the 4 colors in a little block on that document, and right next to each one of the colors was their color code. It had the name of the 2 fonts that are used in my logo, and that's where I started. That was the start of my style book. Anytime I was asked to, maybe put in a newspaper advertisement, or let's say do a commercial, a TV commercial for Channel 12, I would send that style book, that one-page style document, to the producers of those, pieces, whether it's the producer at the TV studio or the graphic artist at the newspaper who does the layout, and they were able to develop the advertising pieces using the correct font and correct colors for my brand. Okay. All right. So the other thing you need to do is really connect to your customers on a personal level. Telling your story it kind of helps set you apart from your competitors because it gives you the chance to put your own personality into it. Elements of a story are that it has a consistent theme. I want to use a product that is a Michigan product and is now featured in quite a few different Sam's Clubs across the Midwest. It's Ellis Island Tea, and they're kind of what sets them apart from the rest of the world of iced tea is that it is a Jamaican style iced tea, and it features hibiscus leaves as part of its flavoring. But the brand name, Ellis Island Tea, ties right to its brand story. And that brand story had to do with the founder of the company's relatives who came from Jamaica and were processed through Ellis Island and brought the tea with them. And so when she's marketing her business, if she's creating a print advertisement or creating a television, commercial or a YouTube video, she's able to use those elements of her brand story, the struggling immigrant, the coming up, with 10 cents in your pocket, but all you have, is this recipe for tea, and now you've created a great flavorful tea brand. Those are elements of the story for Ellis Island Tea, and you're able to incorporate that. So you need to celebrate that sort of underdog position that you're going to have in the marketplace at first, and really kind of craft a good story around your item. We have a kitchen user here who is making banana bread, and the name of their business is Nona's Banana Bread. Nona is a term for grandma. So, they've got this story of grandma's recipe for banana bread, and they're able to kind of capitalize on that. The last two little bullet points here on the elements are overshare and get over yourself. And these are two things that I am terrible at as a business owner. If you're on social media and you follow a specific brand, especially like a local brand where maybe it's just one or two employees who are making this local product, watch how they share on the internet. Watch how they market themselves. Write down Rootless Coffee. It's a brand new company here in Flint. They make coffee. They're a coffee roasting company. They are only in the marketplace for a very short time now, but they're building quite a following, and they're very good at being very consistent with sharing things on the internet. And whether that is taking pictures with their customers who are buying their coffee or producing videos, they're all over the place. And that's where that sort of get over yourself comes into play. And my own personal stumbling block is I hate just throwing myself out there constantly. I have a real estate agent friend who's built quite a small little real estate empire in our area, with his own agency now, or his own firm. And he is constantly, I can't open up Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram without seeing his face right in front of me. He's been doing it for years, and I've seen how it's impacted the growth of his business. So if you can just get over yourself and put yourself out there, celebrate your you-ness, you'll be surprised how compelling that is to people, and it attracts new customers and people to your product like you would never believe. Okay. This one here is probably one of the more important parts of developing your brand. And it can be done either before, during, or in line with all the other parts of building your brand image. It's the value proposition. So first and foremost, if you're making or selling a product, your customer has to need and want that product. You can't just put it out on the shelves and hope somebody comes and buys it. It has to have a need. And we can figure out what those needs are by this kind of fun little exercise of going over the value proposition canvas. And the value proposition is part of one of the segments of your overarching business model canvas. This is just a breakout of how you can actually develop that one square. And what we're trying to do is figure out this relationship between your customer and your product. And there are some, things, elements of each of those little segments that we have to kind of go over. So first and foremost, we're going to talk about the customer canvas. So pains, these are problems that your customer and product are solving for the customer. So some examples of that would be, it's too hard to prepare a healthy dinner that my entire family will enjoy, or I'm sick of only having high sugar juices and soft drinks as a choice when I'm thirsty. Or I love snack foods, but it's really unhealthy. And ultimately, I feel like I'm making a big company even more rich every time I buy a potato chip. Okay, so these are some of the pains that your customer might have. And it's an exercise of you writing down these pains that you think your customer might have, from the time when you draw that little stick figure of your customer and figuring out in a day of their life where your product fits in. Find those pain points. Figure out what part of the day they are experiencing that pain and how your product helps solve that pain. The other thing that your product has to do is give some benefit to the customer. It can't be enough that you're just solving their problem. You have to, for your product to stand out from the other guy's product, it has to make your customer's life better in some way. Okay, so some preferences and attitudes that might influence a customer. So from their pain of it's too hard to prepare dinner, well, some of the gains are, well, my dinner preparation service makes it more convenient to get the whole family together at the dinner table. Oh, and the food is made with no preservatives and organic vegetables. Or for the guy who doesn't want to have high C or Hawaiian punch, our cold pressed juice company uses only local fruit. So there's money kept in the local economy and provide local jobs. Oh, and they're sold frozen so they won't spoil fast. Okay. Or for the potato chip, that customer says they feel a little guilty about making a big company even more rich when they're buying this unhealthy snack. So our potato chips are made by former incarcerated women who need on-the-job experience to return to the workforce. All right. That's going to make somebody feel good about buying that product because it's going directly to a company that's helping train people to get back into the workforce. And on the side note, they're in a packed and reclosable bag so that you don't have to eat the whole bag. You can only eat a little bit and then you can come back for more. All right. Okay. The other thing to think about are the customer jobs. And this is kind of confusing if you just see the term without any context. But your customer jobs are kind of fall into a few different segments: functional, social, and emotional. Right? So functional jobs are practical considerations, kind of mundane and straightforward. Social jobs are driven by a sense of duty, optimism, fear, or aspiration. And emotional jobs come from our preferences, like likes and dislikes. And so think about the job being your customer having this task of actually purchasing your product. That's their job in this big circle here. They need to go and get your job, or their job is to go and get your product. I'm going to introduce a person named Hannah, and she's shopping for new clothes. So some of the things that she's thinking about, or her jobs here, is that she needs new items that can be worn at work so that she looks professional. That falls obviously under the functional aspect of things. She hates being, in this like fast fashion or trendy stuff that only is popular for a little bit. She watched a documentary one time about how they produce some of these trendy items with, sweatshop labor overseas. So that's a social element. She's thinking socially, the social impact of what her purchase is going to do. And then the other thing is she wants her clothes to make her feel confident while she's at work. She doesn't want to feel like she's in a nightclub or that she's in sweatpants. She wants to feel confident and professional. And so that goes to that emotional side of things. So those are the jobs that she has to undertake while she's buying a product. Okay, so using this customer canvas, we have to think about those items as we kind of build our brand image. The next thing would be the product canvas. So the gains are obviously, these are features and advantages and benefits that your customer is going to get from your product. And ultimately the question is, so what? What do these features mean? Why do these features mean anything? And what we need to do is figure out a time frame, for when they're going to be valuable to the customer, either as a gain creator that offers them something new, or as a pain reliever that helps to remove the pain of a current situation. So all of those functions need to be considered. Obviously, gain creators, these are what you need to articulate to the customer in terms of how you're going to make their life better. And pain relievers are how you're going to, relieve their pain. Okay. Then the products and services, these are all these aspects, that you can kind of tie together in almost like a tagline or a description of your brand. Okay, once you figure this out, you've got your brand kind of started, we need to start talking about how we're going to get that message from point A to point B. And I really want to kind of, although there are television, radio, and print advertising opportunities out there, what I want to do is, for today's purposes, really stick with social media. And the reason I want to stick with social media is that it is a low cost, barrier free sort of avenue for any new business to begin advertising. And it doesn't mean that you don't also have to think through and strategize on how you're going to do that. So one of the things that you're going to have to consider, and if you look at the little kind of chart on the side here to the right, is what is your goal for the social media, either campaign that you're putting together, or even if we're thinking about every individual post that we put out there for our brand, are you trying to build brand awareness? Are you trying to manage your brand's reputation? Are you just simply trying to gain customers, get some leads, identify crisis and manage communications? Those are all things that you need to think about when you're creating a post. So creating a post for throwing your nephew or your kid's baseball game up on Facebook so that your family can see it, no problem. Here's a little video of Johnny hitting the ball, and hooray for Johnny. That was awesome. 2 hours later, every aunt and uncle that you have has liked it. That's great. But when you put a business post up, you are trying to attract customers, all right? And whether that means you're just attracting them for an immediate sale or transaction, or you're trying to attract them to get them to be a partner in your brand, or like a future lead, you're just planting a seed with them. All of that has to be considered when you're putting that social post together. So first and foremost, conduct a social media audit, which sounds kind of silly, but if you've not already done it, get through and set up your Facebook business page for your business, your Instagram business page for your business, your Pinterest business page for your business. All of these things need to be set up ahead of time. So just audit and see what you have kind of in your back pocket and what might be missing. You need to decide what's important. Is it return on investment or is it nurturing leads? And then test. I'm gonna switch over to my browser here in a little bit to talk to you kind of about how we can test things and use the stats. But the first and foremost thing you got to think about when you're setting goals is, if you've never heard this before, they need to be SMART goals. So SMART. So that stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. Every time you throw a post out there that you're trying to represent your brand in, it's got to have a goal of doing something. All right. So make sure that they are SMART goals. Okay, the next part here is understanding the numbers. I'm using a Facebook kind of dashboard to the right here, and there could probably be a whole nother seminar on just using social media for advertising or marketing, but I want to use this as an example just to kind of give you a broad overview. Having a strategy can really help you to look at the numbers and figure out if your strategy is working. In the beginning, it could be something as simple as just attracting more followers and likes to your page. Sometime, after you've been up and running for a little while, maybe you want to extend the reach. As a sidebar, one of the most constructive criticisms I ever received on all my social media advertising or efforts had to do with the fact that I was trying to reach too far. And this person told me very smartly that I needed to conquer my local market before I started trying to get into other zip codes. All right. Now, my business is kind of specific to a geographic area in terms of its reach and its impact. But think of that, think about your reach when you're developing your marketing strategy as well. Do you need to reach people in California, or is it more important that you stay within your specific county because you're hand delivering things? So try and keep things very specific. Media strategy can be things like page views and actions on the page, and getting people to actually click a link back to your website so you can convert them into a sale. So up here, I don't know if it'll show my little cursor here. So there's page summary, right? And you can drop this down and really focus in on specific time periods, okay? This is like the Facebook snapshot of how your social media efforts are doing on their platform. Some things to look at in the beginning are total page followers. So down here in the bottom, over this time, between September 23rd and October 20th, this page received 70 followers. Compared to the same time period, before that, it's down 68%. So putting these two numbers together, you're thinking, oh, great, I got 70 followers. Well, the time before that, you got 68% more than that. So what did you do wrong, or what did you do differently than that other time period? If you look at this kind of snapshot regularly, you can figure out whether or not your efforts and your posts are working. Total page followers, is something to kind of look at as well. But bottom line is, you really want to kind of keep track of these numbers, okay? So total page followers, 33,532. Looking in this segment, you can see, like, just here on this little graph, what efforts did you put into this page during this time to gain all these followers all of a sudden? And did it work? Obviously, there was some uptick here, so whatever you were doing was working. Page followers, where did those people come from? So it's important to kind of figure out where these people came from. Organic followers, those are the most valuable followers you'll ever come across. These are people that either stumbled across your page because they were seeking out locally made cookies, or stumbled across your page because they saw you in a news segment advertising your potato chip company that uses, former incarcerated women to work as a job training program. And they thought, oh, that's awesome. Let me go onto Facebook and find out more about this company. Those are organic followers. Paid followers are basically curated through you spending money on the platform. You might come up with this brilliant little video that shows you putting your cookie recipe together and how simple and quick it's done. And it goes in and out of the oven, and it's got some catchy music to it. And you put that up on Facebook, and then you say, all right, I want to boost this post for a budget of $20, and I want to boost it for a week. So what the Facebook does is they make sure that that post gets put into everybody's news feed that fits a specific demographic that you choose. And that's one thing that we're not going to cover here, is that Facebook, because it's kind of more complicated and time consuming, you have the ability on social media to create your perfect customer demographic. So when you go through the process of creating that customer avatar, you can also build that person out in a demographic page on Facebook, and make sure that every time you boost a post or pay for an advertisement, it only goes in front of those types of customers. Okay, I'm going to switch my screen over to my browser again, and I want to kind of go over a little bit more in depth some of the parts of Facebook that you can kind of dig into. If you create a business page, to the left hand side you see insights. Okay, and what you can look at through these insights are some of the more obviously there's this dashboard here, but the people, all right, along the side here, you can find out like who's interacting with your page. Your fans, 86% of these fans are women compared to 14% men. What age group are they in? They're, looks like by and large, between 35 and 44 years old. Where are they located? Looks like mostly Fenton and Grand Blanc, you know? So as you're developing your brand marketing strategy, you can dip back into this Facebook page and figure out from your statistics, if I'm going to boost a post, who should I boost it to? The demographic that I think that this page right here should boost their post to would be women between the ages of 35 and 44 who live in the zip codes of Fenton, Grand Blanc, and Flint, and Linden. Okay? So those are the people that you want to spend your money advertising to, because they're already coming to your page. Some of the other things that you can look at are likes, your reach, all right, posts. This tells you what days of the week are most successful when you post a video or a picture. This shows you, how many people it reached organically, 656. What did those people do? Did they click on it? Only 10 of those people clicked on it. Reactions, either they comment or share on it, 11 of those people do it. So from this segment right here, this page, you can look and see some of your recent posts. And then if you see like something over here stands out that it's extremely successful and it's getting a lot of reaction, you can choose to boost that post and you reach even more people. So when you're looking at ways to spend your money on social media, you can do it by really honing in on the numbers and figuring out what are the most effective ways to do it. If you have a Facebook business page, you have access to this, which is their business suite. Okay. And on here, you can look at some of the insights over your time of your audience. Looking at, just like the other page, like their gender breakdown. This also takes into account Instagram followers because Instagram is owned by Facebook. You can see the breakdown of how all that kind of works, where they're coming from. Okay, content. This once again is another way to look at your posts and see how they're performing. Trends. How many people you're reaching on a regular basis. Okay. So all of these tools are great. There's also a product called Hootsuite, which is a social media sort of aggregator. There are some other ones out there. If you just Google social media management program, there's a few dozen of them out there that work. This is some place where you can actually take all of your streams, your Twitter feed, your Instagram feed, your Facebook page, put them all in one place, and from here you can create a post to all three at once. Okay, so that you're not sitting there on your phone trying to thumb through a whole bunch of different posts just to get to all of your audiences. All right. And this also comes with some good analytic tools to give you an overview of how you're doing. All right. So that is our kind of little, like, I guess I would call this a shallow dive into working with social media as a marketing platform. I'm going to share some really good resources in the resources page with the rest of you to read up on for social media marketing strategies and some helpful things like helping you schedule things. It's a big world out there in terms of social media and how you use it to market your business. So try not to duplicate your efforts if you can. Okay, so just a quick recap. We've talked about coming up with a really great name for our brand and a really great logo for our brand, and then we've strategized ways to get it out into the marketplace and get it out into the world so that people actually start interacting with our brand. The next thing you need to do is to keep up with your competition. Okay, and that doesn't it's not super hard. One of the things that you really want to kind of dive into is something called a competitive analysis. And a competitive analysis, just by definition, it's the process of categorizing and evaluating your competitors to kind of understand their strengths and weaknesses in comparison to your own. And I don't want you to feel like a competitive analysis means that you're trying to come up with a playbook to defeat your enemy. A competitive analysis can be something as simple as finding, I'm going to use my own business as an example, finding a business similar to what you're doing, possibly over in New York City or on the West Coast, and taking a look at what their social media feeds are doing and what their website looks like and how they're actually conducting their business. So if I'm looking for other kitchen shops that do cooking classes, I'm going to occasionally stroll through their websites and find out what topics are they covering. Are they doing a soup class? Are they doing a sushi class? You need to keep up with what else is out there just so that you don't become stale. So competitive analysis, first you got to identify your competitors, right? And that can be something as simple as doing a Google search. So if I'm starting a salsa company, I might do a Google search, and if I were to scroll down all the way at the bottom of the page, you're going to see something called people also searched for. All right, so this can help identify some of your competitors out there just by simply discovering a new brand that you've never seen before. You can click on Good and Gather or Sam's Fresh Salsa, go right to their website and see, oh wow, their marketing looks really good. So you gotta think about that and do your research that way. This is another screen that might kick up on Google on the right hand side, and this is what it looks like when a kind of larger public trading company goes up there. Google does your competitive analysis for you right here. They do all the homework for you. Related products, people also search for, variants of that product. Obviously, Coca-Cola is a pretty easy example. So there are two different kinds of competitors out there. They're direct competitors. These are companies that are offering the same service as you are in the same area, targeting the same audience. So do some work so that you're not offering the same thing that somebody else is already successfully offering. Even if you think your product is better, you need to have some sort of way to differentiate yourself from that other company and other brand that's already doing it successfully. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to stand out in the marketplace. Indirect competitors, these are companies who offer the same or similar services and products that you have in the same area, but who are serving a different need or purpose. Okay, so let's use the salsa company for example. If you're coming up with this fresh salsa company, your direct competitor might be Jack's Salsa Company. All right, they're making locally made, locally sourced salsa, and they're selling at farmers markets throughout Southeast Michigan. All right, they're a direct competitor. But you may want to see them as an indirect competitor if, for example, your business plan is to provide fresh salsa strictly to restaurants and institutions in large bulk sizes. Okay, Jack's Salsa might be great at putting things into a 1 pound container and selling it directly to consumer at the farmers market, but they might not have any foot in the door as far as selling 5-gallon buckets of salsa to restaurants. So figure out a way if there's a way to become an indirect competitor to your direct competitors. One way to do this is through social listening. We're gonna go back to that social media platform once again. So social listening, it's the process of monitoring social media for either mentions of your brand or mentions of your competitors' products. So one of the things that it does for you, for your own specific brand, and most of the social media outlets, whether it be Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, they're pretty good at notifying you when somebody interacts with your page so that you can respond right away. But some of the examples of why you might want to socially monitor you and your competitors would be looking for possible critiques of that product, either your own product or your competitor's product. For example, if you're looking at Jack's Salsa's Facebook page and somebody on there says, I love this salsa and I give it a great review, but it goes bad in about 5 days and then I have to throw it out. One aspect for you to look into for your own salsa company would be, how do I extend the shelf life of my salsa? Because Jack's isn't doing it. They're not getting it done. And if I can say that my salsa lasts 10 days in the refrigerator, twice as long as Jack's, that gives me a huge lead over that competitor. So do some social listening. Make sure that you are kind of on top of what your competitors are doing. And it can be as simple as 10 minutes a day, scrolling through your news feed and following the different competitors out there, just to stay on top of it. Cautionary tale there, though, it can also create some like early morning rage if the first thing you do is get out of bed and look on your Facebook feed for your competitors and you see them constantly doing something really fun and successful while you're still trying to get your feet off the ground. Do not look at that as a bad thing. Just don't let it make you mad. Just let it fuel your fire to kind of get yourself up and running and working harder. And let's see. That's it. That's all I have for you guys here today. I'm going to kind of go back to my camera here and stop sharing the screen. And I don't know if Nick has anything on the chat. I've not been able to see that yet.
So let me just first thank Sean for this great presentation. This is chock full of important information for you guys. And again, we are recording the session and we'll send you some of these resources after the fact.
Yep.
So there's not any questions in the chat yet.
I have one that came to me privately, Nick, here, and I won't mention the name, but they asked if I was speaking. It says, as you speak to this, are you speaking to ads, organic posts, or both? And I believe we're talking about our slides on Facebook. I want to say yes to all. So if this question had to do with how we're looking at the statistics, you're able to look at those like on your organic posts compared to your paid posts, maybe even compared to your ads, your actual advertisements, just so you know if you're working on a platform like Facebook. There is something called boosting a post. So if you took a picture of your cookies and it looked awesome and you see that like 100 people instantly liked it, you might want to boost that post. That's just paying an extra $10 to make sure that it stays kind of up into people's newsfeed. Then there's an actual ad. An advertisement is something, and that is like, as you see it in your newsfeed, it says that it's a paid advertisement. And with that advertisement, you may want to put a different sort of message in there. And that advertisement usually has some sort of a call to action for the customer so that they're coming either back to your website or, going to register for a product or what have you. There's a call to action in that ad. But as far as going over all these statistics and seeing, how your things perform, it counts for all of it: ads, organic posts, and both.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, we have an expert with us today. Can we have the e-presentation? We certainly can share the recording. I'm not sure if we can share the PowerPoint, but we can discuss that. And certainly Sean does work with folks, obviously, in the community here. Could you just take a second and talk a little bit about how the Flint Food Works, how that all goes?
Certainly, Nick. So the Flint Food Works, we're housed here in the Flint Farmers Market, and we have 2 commercial kitchen facilities over on the east side of the market. You may or may not have seen them. They are a rental kitchen facility. So my job is to help people get their business up and running and licensed with either the Michigan Department of Agriculture or the Genesee County Health Department. And then those businesses who are making either a food product or working as a caterer, they operate out of our kitchen facility. And I'm here for this sort of outreach. So as you're developing your business and growing, I'm here as like a kind of a coach, pat you on the back, help you move forward type of guy.
I got one comment here from Colleen, just thanking you so much for sharing your knowledge. And Runisha saying great information. If there's any other questions, Robbie's thanking you a lot, Sean. If there's any other questions, now would be a perfect time to throw them in, because if you have them, probably some other folks do as well in the session here.
We did have one question come through. It was about how much the cost of the kitchen is. It's $18 an hour. $18 an hour.
And if you missed our first session, there's a huge amount of value with that, because in order to have a professional kitchen like this, you have to go through all the licensing certification. You have to have the right equipment. It has to be, properly maintained and cleaned in a certain way. So where you're spending $18, you're essentially getting a $50,000, $60,000 value. It's huge.
Yep. And the kitchen's not open to the public. It's only open to I guess what we call Flint Food Works members. So these are people that we bring through the orientation process and get them licensed, and then they have access to the kitchen. So because we have about a dozen different businesses working out of there, all under their own food service license, we can't let it be open to just anybody. I guess like hotel style, where you just book a room. You come in and go through the process of getting your business set up in those kitchens at that location, then you can rent them.
And for the folks that missed the first session, I will, when we send out the email the next day or so, I'll include the resource from that session as well as resources from this and a link to the recording. So you can go to the single site and see both if you missed it. I got another question here from C. Stoll. Do you do the nutritional value information too through the kitchen?
No, but we can share some resources on the internet and with Michigan State to help you get those numbers figured out for your recipe. I had a question come through to me here. It says, at what point do you consider trademarking your food brand? And I would say right away. If you have the resources to pay for the trademarking process, and I'm sorry I don't have that cost in front of me, I would go for it right away. It's just, make sure that you secure your brand in the marketplace and nobody kind of snakes you out of it.
And they do that through the USPTO.gov, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
At the trademark office. I'll put that in the chat as well. Got a question here from Jeremy. Do you have suggestions on how a small farm might market to small food producers as well as small restaurants? How they might market fresh organic produce?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it all comes down to how you present your product to the customer. And so if you're a farm, you're a small organic farm, you already have the starts of a great brand story. Get some assets in place, like photography of your farm, pictures of the actual produce that you're taking out of the ground, and then attach some information to that kind of picture. And you might comment on the pack sizes that you put your tomatoes in. We sell tomatoes by the full case. Put some features, advantages and benefits on the sell sheet that say, like, we pick our tomatoes and within 24 hours they're under refrigeration. All these different benefits of why you think your produce is better than the stuff that comes off the Gordon truck. You need to write it down and put it onto an asset of some sort. That's a website, a Facebook page, just a flyer. And then it's sorry to say, but the only way to really get your product out there in the world is, start knocking on some doors. Get out there and maybe take some samples to local restaurants and talk to the chef and give them, your sell sheet and say, here are the 10 items that we grow and that we can consistently provide you, on a weekly basis. And here's the market price for it. That's the first step. All right. On a personal level, I'm also the president of the board of directors for Flint Fresh Food Hub. That's located over on Court Street. We're a nonprofit organization who work with small farms to aggregate produce, and then we turn around and sell it to the larger institutions. So I would suggest, getting onto the website for flintfresh.com or flintfresh.org and contacting the directors over there to possibly sell your product.
And that's a nonprofit, Flint Fresh. But if you guys are familiar with how co-ops work, it's very much a selling co-op. So the way to get the best price and have enough produce, even in a small farm, in order to really make it worth for a big institutional buyer potentially. Are there any other questions while we have Sean here? Okay. Well, like I said, we're going to follow up with you guys. So if you registered and we have your email, you'll be getting an email the next day or so with links to this video as well as the previous session, as well as those resource pages about just about everything we covered today. I really encourage you guys to sign up if you haven't done so yet for a third session. It's going to be about labeling, packaging, and distribution. That'll be on November 18th from noon to 1:30. And I will go ahead and add the registration link in the chat as well as in that email. So I just again want to thank Sean for all the great information in his time today. Thank everyone for joining us, and we hope to see you next time.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.